Hi Year 12, today we're going to begin looking at family. The way that the slides will be sorted is that everything's going to be numbered. So every day you're going to get a number 1 right through to 14, and that everything's going to be sorted in that way. And then from there you'll also have activities, case studies, everything to do with that. You'll have that on your Canvas modules page, so it'll be quite obvious how things will be set out. One thing we need to be mindful of when we are going through the family topic, there are going to be some things that you may not necessarily agree with, but you need to remember that you need to keep a really neutral opinion because you just don't know who the markers are going to be. So you don't want to give people your opinion whether you think something is wrong or right, and that's, I guess, not what we're looking at. We're looking at the facts, we're looking at the statistics, and that's what's going to get you the marks as opposed to your personal opinion. Now, every topic has a principal focus, and the principal focus for family is through the use of contemporary examples, students investigate the legal nature of relationships and effectiveness of the law in achieving justice. And here we're going to look at a range of contemporary examples. They include your same-sex marriage, care and protection of children, domestic violence, the usual. And then we're going to look at key legal mechanisms. So we're going to look at courts and legislation, how they've reformed things over time. I think the same-sex marriage thing has been done. It's a bit old, but now we're looking at changing values. What are the changing values in our society? Obviously, you know, the nuclear family is not the norm, I guess, what it was years ago. We're seeing de facto relationships, we're seeing same-sex relationships, we're seeing, you know, different types of relationships. So here what you can see is the family syllabus, and that's easily downloadable from the NESA website if you haven't done that already. And at the top there, you can see how you've got your principal focus, which is just here. And then over here, you've got your themes and your challenges. And the themes and challenges is the area that you're actually going to get a lot of your questions that are going to come from. And over the next couple of slides, and these slides are going to be in every single PowerPoint that you get, it goes through looking at what are some of the things we need to look at when we're looking at these themes and challenges. How can we actually answer that question in order to get the best possible marks? Further down here, you've got the nature of family law, you've got the responses to problems, and then you've got your contemporary issues. So this is how they're both, the topic is split up into 3 distinct sections, and we'll go through each one of those. Now, throughout the textbook, you're actually going to see a lot of wordy slides. They're textbook amendments. So what the publishers have done, they've given us some updates on information that they had written in the textbook from 2016. And then from there, they're going to talk about what are the differences that we have, I guess with what we see now. So I'll put those up there for you, and then we'll talk through some of those, but at least they'll be there for you to read. This document here, you can see the questions. I've shown you this document before, but what I'll do, I'll upload it onto your modules as well. And what you can see here is questions from 2010 to 2019, and you've got crime, consumers, and then family. And then again, we're looking at those terms again: assess, how effective, to what extent, evaluate the effectiveness. So again, we're looking at these key terms. And here, when we're looking at 2010, we're looking at, you know, the changes. We're looking at problems. We're looking at relationship breakdown. We're looking at courts delivering justice. Here, a very specific one: birth technologies and surrogacy. So with the good thing about family is that you're going to get an option of 2 questions. So in 2010, you had question 1 and then you had question 2. And from there, you can choose which one you're more confident answering. So these questions are going from 2015 to 2017, and again, what I'm planning on doing is going through periodically one of these questions just to see how we're going to answer it, what kind of and I'll give you samples in terms of how others have answered it, but how we're going to answer that and how we're going to unpack this question so we can stand out from, you know, the rest of the people doing the HSC. Okay, here what we have, we've got the 2018 and then the 2019 questions. So this is the section that we really need to focus on with every single one of your topics, and it's the themes and challenges. There's 5 of them, and your questions for your extended responses in the HSC are going to come from this. The first one is the role of the law in encouraging cooperation and resolving conflict in regards to family, issues of compliance and non-compliance, changes to family law as a response to changing values in the community. And that's a really big one because our values are changing. We're not as traditional as we were years ago. 4, the role of law reform in achieving just outcomes for family members and society. And there's that word law reform. We've looked at bail law reform. We're going to the law reform, I think, in family centres around the child, and centres around the child being the focus of everything that needs to happen, as opposed to, you know, a child years ago where you're there to be seen, not heard, and now it's the kid that's coming to the forefront in order for them to sort of tell people or the judge how they feel and what they want. And the last one is the effectiveness of legal and non-legal responses in achieving just outcomes for family members, and we'll explore what they look like. Now, what I can do, because I'm there, I'm not sure whether you can get rid of that, but I'll upload potentially a blank copy without the sound recording, just so you're not obviously losing some of the work on the PowerPoint slides. Now, what you're going to see over the next 5 slides are the 5 themes at the top, and then under each one of those are some dot points on some things that we're going to focus on, or some of the things that we need to be mindful of when we're looking at these themes and challenges. You'll see those on every single slide just so you can refer back to them. So if we look at the first one, the role of law in encouraging cooperation and resolving conflict in regard to family, primary dispute resolution process. So we're looking at how we're going to resolve conflicts. We're not going to go straight to court. We're going to go through mediation. We're going to go through every possible scenario before we get to courts. Courts don't want to get involved. And one thing, it's quite an expensive process. Again, we're looking here at the best interest of the child, and what does that look like? Is it equal shared responsibility? Is it equal in the decision making? And you know, there's just some of the things that we're going to look at. Just once again, go through this. We will spend more time on it, but just for now, you can sort of see issues of compliance and non-compliance. And here where it says the family court intervenes as a last resort to protect individual rights and enforce spousal or parental responsibilities. So the court can enforce compliance relating to children, but they would obviously like the parents to go through that, and if they can come to a mutual decision or agreement between themselves, then they should do so. So with the third theme and challenge, changes to family law as a response to changing values in the community. And the first point is really important. We're looking at family as the core unit of society. That's changed over time. You don't have the nuclear family where you've got mum and dad and the 2 kids. We're now seeing a wider range or circumstances that families find themselves in. Just laws reflect widely, help community values and ethics, need for reform, so the law remains current and effective. And we see that, I guess, one of the big ones is going to obviously be marriage, and how that legislation has changed, and how they've used wording, or the new wording. The last one, again, looking at how laws have changed. So you've got de facto relationships, same-sex couples, surrogates, assisted reproductive technology, divorce, domestic violence. There's so much that we can actually look at, and we'll explore those through a lot of different case studies. So theme 4, we're looking again, law reform. So this one here is a really big one because the law always lags, because I guess when you're looking at technology, that's always sort of one step ahead of where you're, in terms of where we're at, and they're always one step ahead. Again, NGOs that help in law reform, and obviously that helps us make progress, and they push for change. So the last one, the effectiveness of legal and non-legal responses, those words always come up. So we know that the legal responses are to do with the legal system and the power they have to change laws. And then we've also got the non-legal responses, which are your lobby groups, media, education, people that push the legal people to get things done. Now, what's going to happen over the next 3 slides is we're going to go through the difficulty of defining family law. We're going to look at distinguish between state and federal jurisdiction of family law. So again, we're going to start putting in some legislation because that's what's going to give you the marks. And then we're going to look at the legal requirements of a valid marriage. So when is a marriage valid, and when doesn't it meet the certain criteria? So this is an example of where you're going to see some textbook amendments. So on page 333 of your textbook, where it's highlighted here, that's where the differences are. So these are, excuse the straight lines, these are the actual amendments. So you've got where in the paragraph they've changed certain terms. So again, I'll upload that document for you. So then you've got a bit of a, you can just sort of slot in and figure things out. But I think the biggest one is the Marriage Amendment Definition and Religious Freedoms Act in 2017. And that's the one that changed the way that, or changed how we define marriage. So just some more amendments here that we can see, really straightforward. I've just thought I'd put them in where they belong, sort of before each syllabus dot point, so you're aware of. So here now we're looking at the first dot point, which looks at the concept of family law. It's very difficult to define family because in modern Australia there are people living in many different kinds of personal relationships that they regard as a family. And when we get further into the syllabus, sort of on your number 3 lesson, you'll actually see all the different types of family structures that exist and how people deal with those. So marriage is now legal following the 2017 reform in this area. So what we've got here, it enables same-sex couples to marry and demonstrates a legal response which achieves fairness for those families comprised of same-sex partners. So that was a really big sort of legislation that was around. Now the next lesson we're going to look at what constitutes a marriage, what makes a marriage valid, and we'll go through all of those.